Okay, so your GMO greetings. I'll say everyone for joining into this live. I just want to give people a couple of minutes to check in. If you have any issues with the sound, let me know. I'll say hold on a second. Joining into this live, I just want. In fact, can somebody post a message in the chat? Just let me know if you can hear me. Just want to make sure the sound is good. Okay. Okay, so your GMO greetings. I say that means thank you for tuning in. So for those who are unaware, I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Radnambata Akan. And what I want to do with this short information session is to go over the information we just put out regarding our upcoming certification for meditation instructor, the Susuw certification. So we just want to touch on that information. If you have any questions about that, of course, we can answer those. Going to go over some of the information on the website, new page that we just put up. So let's touch on that now. Okay, so what we are doing is this is a certification. So it's not just a class to teach meditation. It is a certification so individuals can take this information, take this knowledge that you've been given once you're certified, and you can utilize that to hold meditation sessions in the context of community empowerment, but also entrepreneurship. You can go into schools, independent schools or charter schools or women's or family shelters and so forth, or cultural organizations or Black-owned businesses or corporate entities and so forth with your certification. Some individuals or some groups or some businesses ask for certifications if you're going to teach meditation sessions and so forth. Some do not. The reason that we're hosting this and we're putting forward this certification process is simply because people have asked us to do it for a while. With regard to myself, and we're going to get into some of this, I've been doing this for over 30 years. With regard to publishing, I first published something on meditation on Susuw just over 20 years ago. Been practicing this for over 30 years and so forth. I published a number of books. And let me just go to the website real quick so you can see some of the books that we put forward. Okay, so this is the Nhoma page. The Akan term Nhoma means publications. So this is my publications page on my website. And when you scroll through, you will see 31 books. So to date, I've published 31 books on various aspects of Afuraitkait, African ancestral religion, culture, nation building, cosmology, language, holistic health, and different things. So one of the books that we put forward, the Pata Sasatim, is a curriculum. That was the first time we published something in the context of teaching meditation, as well as other, cultural practices and so forth. The Ubin Shang is another book that we talked about the philosophy of meditation as focused observation. We put that out back in 97, the end of 97 into 98. So we've been doing this for a while. But a number of individuals have asked us if we can hold a certification course and process. So once you go through that process, then you're certified, and then you can take this information and utilize it in an entrepreneurial fashion. So this is the reason why we decided to do that. So we can impact our community, whether it's youth or adults, in various facets across the board. So So we're going to look at the flyer real quick, and then we're going to go into a few details, and then we'll answer some questions. It's just an informational to give you an idea of what's taking place. So first, we use the term Susuw, and then we give a definition. So we say Susuw is the ancient Akan term for meditation. Susuw originated in our ancestral culture of Afuraka, Afuraitkait, meaning Africa, tens of thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years before India, before our people migrated into India and settled India, before Europeans came into existence. Prior to our migration into India, we were already practicing meditation. We're going to touch on that a little bit when we look at one of our books. So we originated this practice. This ancient practice has been utilized to regulate physical, emotional, and mental balance for millennia in varied expressions wherever our people have migrated in the world. If we look at, real quickly, if you look at the video that we put forward, we show an image, a couple of images. Second. So you see this seated figure from ancient Kemet. This is Amenhotep, the son of Hapu. So there's a difference between Amenhotep, the first, second, third, and fourth, who are four different Ainsuer kings, so-called Perah, so-called pharaohs, and so forth. This is a official and an elder within the court, in the royal court and so forth. But Amenhotep, the son of Hapu, 1380, so-called BCE, about 2,300 years ago, 2,400 years ago. And what you see, of course, is one of the common meditative postures that you see all over ancient Khanid and Kemet, ancient Egypt and Nubia. This sacred spiritual sculpture from the Akan people, in this context, the Baule Akan people in Ivory Coast in West Afuraka, Afuraitkait, West Africa. She's sitting on her sacred seat and so forth. That is a meditative posture as well. And then, of course, when we migrated into North America, we were forced to migrate into North America. We continued our ancestral religious practices, and Susuw meditation was part of that. No matter what group we came from, every Afurakani or Afuraitkait African ancestral group, clan, has their own term for meditation as part of spiritual ritual practice. Now, okay, so we say the scientific benefits of meditation for youth and adults have been well documented. Enhancing learning outcomes, regulating behavior, overcoming anxiety, depression, rebalancing hormones. Hold on one second. Hold on one second. Let me make sure we can. Okay. Okay, so overcoming anxiety, depression, rebalancing hormones, lowering blood pressure, reducing stress, regulating weight loss, overcoming addictions, developing discipline, maintaining focus to overcome obstacles to short and long-term goals. Now, let's go into some detail about the etymology of the term Susuw, how it's related to meditation, and so forth. Okay, so we give this etymology first in the language of ancient Khanid and Kemet, so-called Nubian Egypt. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So on the right here, you see Susuw, to measure, especially by the application of a staff or similar instrument, but to measure. That's number one. To sound, to search or measure the depth of, to calculate capacity. Number two, to think, imagine, suppose, presume, to think on, reflect upon, to consider, to meditate. That's in the Akan language. So the term Susuw, to think on, to reflect upon, to meditate upon, to measure. And in the context of self-development and so forth, Susuw hon, which means to reflect upon, Susuw, the ehun, the self. So that's the term for meditation, Susuw. It is a reduplication of the root term su. So sometimes that doubling aspect you see in Afuraitkait or African languages across the board. So su is the term, Susuw is the reduplication of that term. When we look in the language of ancient Khanid and Kemet, you'll see that su, the root of the term, thousands of years ago, a measure of length. So to measure. You also find the term su, meaning drink or to drink and so forth, or a drink. When you fill up a drink and so forth, it's a form of measure. You'll find that the term su in Akan means to drink as well. Same language when our people migrated from ancient Khanid and Kemet, Egypt and Nubia, into the western part of the continent, we reestablished ancient Kemeti and Khaniti civilization and continue to speak the language, continue to practice the culture, continue to engage in the ritual practices and so forth. So of course, the same definitions of su or susu, to measure, to meditate, to reflect upon, to contemplate and so forth, to measure and so forth, including to measure the self, to reflect upon the self, to study the self, to measure the self. Measure the self against what? Against the standard of divine order that regulates all of creation. So the same term you have in Akan, same term su, to measure and so forth in ancient Kemet. Now, let's look at the etymology of the word meditate in English. To ponder, to think abstractly, engage in mental contemplation. To meditate, to think over, reflect, consider. Frequentative form of the Proto-Indo-European root med. What does med mean? To take appropriate measures. So when you look at the root term med, it means to measure. That's the root of meditate. Where did they get that term from? That concept, when you think upon something, you ponder something, you calculate something, you consider something, you're measuring that thing against, in our culture, of course, the standard of divine law, which is the expression of divine order. That's what meditation or Susuw is. But we have a little bit further. So the root, of course, is med, to take appropriate measures. Where does the Proto-Indo-European root med come from? Thousands of years before Europeans existed on Earth, the term med that they utilize is a corruption of meh from ancient Kemet. What is meh? The cubit. 7 hand breadths or 28 finger breadths and so forth. But the cubit is the central unit of measurement in ancient Kemet for all buildings and temples and tombs and everything else. The cubit, and you even have here, meh, Ainsu. Ainsu means royal and so forth. So the meh, Ainsu is the cubit royal, or the royal cubit. And that's the center of measurement. Just like you have inches and, feet and so forth, and yards and so forth. In this culture, the basic units of measurement to determine how you're going to lay out roads and buildings and everything else. Mathematically, the central unit of measurement was the cubit in ancient Kemet, but we didn't call it cubit, we called it meh, the central, unit of measurement. So the Proto-Indo-European root meh, meaning appropriate measure, comes from meh in ancient Kemet, the appropriate measure. And they even talk about the sacred meh or cubit associated with the deities, the spirit forces in creation and so forth. So it's always tied to divine order and so forth. But we just wanted to show that this notion of measuring, to take appropriate measures, to think over, reflect, consider, is something that doesn't come from Europeans. It's something that we've been defining in the same fashion for tens of thousands of years, from ancient Khanid and Kemet, Nubian Egypt, into West Afuraka, Afuraitkait, as shown in the Akan culture, Susuw, but also the various cultures around the continent. And then we bring that into North America. So when you think upon or consider or reflect upon or calculate the depth of something, the depth of yourself, and once again, to calculate the capacity of, to search or measure the depth of, we are searching or measuring the depth of your feelings, your thoughts, your intentions, your actions, to make sure every thought, every intention, every action, every moment of every day is a reflection of the order of creation, so you won't be discordant and self-destructive and engaged in behaviors or thoughts and intentions and later actions that are self-destructive. We want to always have thoughts, intentions, and actions that are constructive. When you're talking about calculating or measuring the depth of something, including the depth of your own spirit, your spiritual anatomy, that's what we're talking about with regard to meditation. Let's show one more proof of these concepts. Okay, so another one of the books I published is called Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, Karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. So in this particular text, of course, you see the Ankh, which is the quote unquote key of life and so forth. Just to show very quickly. The word Ankh means life in ancient Kemet. This is the Ankh symbol. That means life in general, but one of the spellings, you'll see the Ankh, and then you see the wavy line, which is the N sound, and the Siev, which is the K sound, and the rolled piece of papyrus, and you see a kneeling individual who's shrouded. That's an ancestral spirit, so forth and so forth. So that's a human life. In this sense, Ankh, meaning life, is the life of a human being who's now an ancestral spirit. But you also have Ankh, meaning the life of a domesticated goat. And you see the goat here with the horns and so forth. It's an animated life form. In this context, an animal which is an animated force. What's important is when you expand it out, you see that the Ankh is around the neck of the goat in the form of a yoke. The reason why that's important is because typically when they talk about the origin of the term yoga, they trace it back to yoke and the Indo-European root yuk or yunek or yunk with a nasal N and so forth. And it means to yoke or to bind or to tie and so forth. And they would surmise that yoking is yoking, the spirit to the body or the spirit to the, divinity and so forth. This term Ankh, and let's just scroll up real quick. The Ankh itself, the pronunciation of Ankh, and we show this in the book linguistically, it came to be corrupted. The pronunciation instead of Ankh, it became yonk by Europeans, and yonk became yunek and yonk and yug and yok and so forth, and later yok and yoka and all of that. We go through the entire etymology to prove that, but the key is linguistically and also cosmologically, the Ankh or the yonk, the life principle, is around the neck of the animal in the form of a yonk or a yoke. English yoke, Proto-Indo-European yonk, and so forth. So they took the term and the philosophy, but they didn't have the entire cosmology that supports that. We go into detail to prove that. In the book, we show the Medutu, the hieroglyphs, and everything else. In Akan culture today, you will see that the Akurbadal is a continuation of the Ankh symbol. We go into detail to show that. We also show that in the Akan language, you see right here, Onkwa in the Akan today means life, vitality, vigor, health, and so forth. So Onkwa in Akan is Ankh in ancient Kemet. It was corrupted into Yonk and Yok and Yoka by Europeans and so forth after they invaded ancient India, which was populated by our people before Europeans existed on Earth and so forth. So we just show the true story, not history, but the true story. This is one of the books that we're going to go into detail about in the course, just to give that true historical background. You see the symbol of the various divinities, and they're seated in a specific posture and so forth. One of the common meditative postures. You'll see the sacred animal totem, the Achinebois, or animal totem, the sacred animal totem of the divinity, Tahuti and so forth, divinity of divine wisdom, and you see the scribe seated in the cross-leg position. This sacred animal totem is a spirit, so it's an individual sitting next to a spirit, but of course, when they're making sculptures, if you're going to sculpt and try to show that there's a spirit sitting next to this individual that he's communicating with, of course, you have to make the spirit in the form of a solid being in a sculpture. But if you saw somebody sitting in a sacred shrine space and they had their legs crossed and they're all alone, but that spiritual entity is in the space and so forth, this is what this is depicting. He's sitting in a meditative posture, and there's a spiritual entity, which is the animal totem, the sacred animal totem of the divinity of wisdom. You'll also see that sacred animal totem of the divinity of wisdom. That sacred baboon has a certain kind of seated posture, and you'll see that the deities are very often seated in that very same posture, that common meditative posture, sometimes with the legs crossed, but sometimes with the knees up and the hands rested on the knees. Here you see Sin and Moot with the knees up and the hand rested on the knees and so forth. another common meditative posture that predates, so-called yoga and so forth in India by thousands of years. Then we go into the origin of the term chakra or kakra. And we show in ancient Kandini Kemet, thousands of years before this term was taken by our people into India, kara, which became kakra, and later chakra, but it's still pronounced kakra in certain dialects in India. Kakra comes from kara, anything round, staff, stick, cylinder, and so forth. Kara. It's a reduplication of kara or kara, a doubling of that. What is the root of that term? Kar or kara, a shrine, a sanctuary, a chapel, and then deities that dwell in the shrine. So it's a circular kara shrine for the spirits of creation. That's an image of a shrine. Then we show how that terminology was incorporated in the texts of ancient Kemet thousands of years ago. And just to go quickly, we show these when you go back to the text of ancient Kemet. Very often when you see people talking about yoga and chakras and everything else, they'll show a relationship between the sets of nerve ganglia, the bunches of nerves in the same positions as the 7 major kakra or chakra, what we call karu, and so forth. These 7 nerve ganglia or knots of nerves, as you can see here. Well, these 7 kasu or knots in the body were addressed in this text, which is one of the Mer texts or pyramid texts over 4,000 years ago. So, now we also quote from another text from the Runu Pert Imheru, chapter 71, so-called Book of the Dead, but the Runu Pert Imheru, and it addresses the 7 sacred knots. O you 7 knots, the arms of the balance on the night of setting the sacred eye in order, who cut off heads, who sever necks, who take away hearts, who make a slaughter in the island of fire. I know you, I know your names. May you know me just as I know your names. If I reach you, may you reach me. If you live through me, may I live through you. May you make me to flourish with what is in your hands, the staff, spine, which is in your grasp. So we're talking about the 7 sacred knots with spiritual forces animating each one of those 7 knots, and they're in the ritual prayer, they're invoking these spiritual forces that animate these 7 knots, and the 7 knots are around the staff or the spine of the individual. So we just put those texts out there to prove that we were talking about the 7 sacred knots associated with 7 spiritual entities, circular centers within the spirit body of the person thousands of years before Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and so forth. Fully incorporated in ritual, fully incorporated in language, fully incorporated in the culture and cosmology of our people prior to our migration to India. Now, and of course, the pyramid texts are the oldest religious compositions yet unearthed in the world, older than any other religious compositions. And there's an address in this particular text, just so you can see it real quick. Talking to the king, the Susuw. Unas was the king at the time. He transitioned. They have this text inside of his tomb and so forth. And the text says, it's 4,400 years ago. Unas, the king, is associated with the sacred Nau snake, the leading bull who has swallowed his 7 aratu, 7 radiant sacred cobras, and so his 7 neck vertebrae came into being. who give orders to the 7 Posjatu who hear the words of the king. So this notion 4,400 years ago that the king, when he's engaged in ritual practice, he swallows these 7 radiant discs that become his 7 neck vertebrae. This whole notion of 7 sacred centers around that are radiant energy centers along the vertebrae and so forth in the spirit body of the individual. We're just showing that that cosmology, philosophy, imagery, symbolism was originated by our people tens of thousands of years ago, and it continued in the pyramid text, the Meru text, and so forth. And when our people migrated, some of us, to India, different parts of the world and so forth, of course, we carried that with us. So it has nothing to do with Indo-Europeans invading Northwest India a few thousand years ago and bringing any culture. They didn't bring any culture, they didn't bring any philosophy, they didn't bring any meditation, they didn't bring yoga, they didn't bring chakras, and they didn't bring anything. They learned about those things once they came in contact with our people who had already migrated to the Indian subcontinent thousands of years prior to their existence in the world, prior to the European existence in the world, and prior to the Asian existence in the world. So that's just a little primer with regard to that. So we can get that out the way. So when people think meditation has to do something to do with India, we can just knock that out the way, and then we can focus on what's real. Now, so when it comes to meditation, when we talk about measuring the depth of something, measuring the capacity of something, reflecting, pondering upon yourself, so you can align your thoughts, intentions, and actions with productive behavior instead of self-destructive behavior and so forth. Also, your physical health, if we think about it, you meditate every single day. You've meditated at some point every single day since you were born into the world. Now, the most dramatic form of meditation that you engage in every single day is, for example, when you reflect on something, if you're reading a book, if you're looking at something on the internet, if you're tuned in, meditation is focused observation. You're measuring the sounds or the thoughts or the images that you're seeing, the characters on the screen or on the page of a book, or the geometric forms or the sounds or the colors or whatever it is. You're measuring all of that. You're calculating, you're thinking, pondering, and seeing how that relates to you. And if somebody says something, you may not even hear what they're saying because you're so focused on what you're reading, what you're seeing, what you're listening to. If you're listening to music, if you're looking at art, if you're watching something, if you're reading something, when you have focused observation and you're blocking other things out, that is meditation. You're measuring, you're studying, you're contemplating, you're pondering. So that's a form of meditation. If somebody says, hey, did you hear what I said? And then it kind of snaps you out of that quote unquote coma. Then you say, oh, what did you say? Because you were focused. That's a form of meditation. The most dramatic form, of course, is when you go to sleep at night. What you're doing, hold on a second. Okay. When you go to sleep at night, you go inward. Your focused observation is focused on the internal instead of the external planes and so forth. Your body is rejuvenating itself, healing itself, repairing itself, and so forth. And you're becoming rejuvenated spiritually so that when you get up the next day, you're refreshed, you're focused, you're rejuvenated, you're renewed, and so forth. And that's what's going on. That is the most dramatic form of meditation that you engage in every night. Ever since you were born, you will continue to do so throughout your entire life. If you catch yourself daydreaming, that's a form of meditation. You slip into a daydream, you start focusing on something else, you block out everything else until somebody snaps you out of it or until you snap yourself out of it. You're changing your focus of observation from what's in front of you to focusing internally to measure or contemplate or calculate the depth of something. So if you slip into daydreaming because you're trying to figure out what you need to do entrepreneurial-wise or relationship-wise or culturally, organizational-wise and so forth, if you slip in and out daydreaming or, just thinking about things, it's much better if you're an adult, you're mature, to actively or proactively engage that process. Just like with sleep. You know, babies, of course, they're going to sleep when it's time and so forth. If you stay up all day, you're doing whatever you're doing, working, engaging in different projects and so forth, and you just keep going and going and going and going for 15, 16, 18, 20 hours until you just pass out in the chair and fall asleep, that's not the best way to operate. The best way to operate is to plan that process so that you can take optimum advantage of it. So you make sure you do certain things at certain times of the day, and then when nighttime comes along, you set aside that time so you can get that renewal for that deep sense of meditation so you can get the most out of it. You can repair your body, renew your cells and so forth, and also rejuvenate your mind, your spirit. Same thing with, instead of daydreaming, if you set aside a specific time of the day to focus internally, to measure, to ponder, to contemplate internally, then you can optimize that and make good decisions. You can utilize that time, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, to focus on what things need to be done, what things need to be organized, what you need to engage in, who you need to interact with or stop interacting with and so forth. You can look into different problems, assess these issues, find remedies and so forth, or resources that can help you bring balance to situations. When you plan it out, when you're proactive, instead of just allowing it to happen to you, like you fall into a daydream or you fall into a, you just lose consciousness of what's going on in the moment and you start focusing on something else because you have some anxiety, that's not the best way to operate. We do that sometimes as children, but once you become adults, you regulate your life, you plan your life and so forth for optimization. So we do the same thing with regard to meditation. We optimize that practice, the practice that we've been engaged in every day of our lives since we were infants. We optimize that and take advantage and take control of that. Another form of meditation is when you see bears going to hibernation and so forth. The weather changes, they go into that hibernation, they rejuvenate themselves, they purify themselves, they protect themselves and so forth. And then when they come out, they're rejuvenated, they're ready to engage the world. Crocodiles do the same thing. They go into what is called estivation. They bury themselves in, for example, the Nile crocodile buries itself in the Nile mud and so forth for a number of weeks and so forth, not moving, very similar to hibernation. But then when it's time for them to emerge, they're purified, they're rejuvenated, and so forth. And we do the same thing when we sleep, when we go into spirit consultation, when we dream, but also when we engage in meditation or ritual song or ritual dance or pouring libation or different things that we do. So when we're talking about meditation, and we're going to get into this in the course, we let people know first and foremost that you engage in focused observation every single day. Anytime you focus on something and block something else out, you are meditating. You're just throwing yourself into that meditative posture. So what's the best way to do that? Looking at television and looking at something that's plugging your consciousness and subconsciousness with foolish images or, misinformation and so forth? Or do you watch things that are going to empower you, inform you, and so forth? If you're listening to music, is it something that's empowering, energizing and so forth? Or is it something that's plugging misinformation or self-destructive ideas, vices and so forth into your subconscious so you continue to operate on that? You take control of what you're ingesting and utilize it for your benefit. So you let people know, we let people know ahead of time, youth as well as adults. We've taught meditation with youth as well as adults over the past 20 plus years. So you let them know you're already engaged in meditation on a regular basis. Now it's time to properly define it and utilize it to its best benefit since you're doing it already. Now, and again, this is just giving some context to the approach. So first and foremost, it's something natural. Even if you see a bird, a crane standing on one leg and looking in the water and so forth, that's focused observation. They are stilling themselves, they're rejuvenating themselves, they're meditating, they're being focused. If you see a lion or lioness just looking around or just focused and so forth, listening to see if some predator is coming from another direction and so forth. Their observation is focus. Animals do that. We do that naturally. We need to optimize what we're doing. And of course, when you get to this whole notion of the scientific benefits of meditation, whether it's lowering blood pressure, all these different things that we read about a little while ago, those are the things that are selling points when you enter into contractual arrangements with schools or organizations or businesses or, you know, certain events when people say, hey, we need somebody to teach a 30-minute or host a 30-minute session where you may introduce some things for the first 10 minutes. You may have a 15-minute, you know, meditation session and then have some questions and answers and so forth. It depends on how you want to structure. But so our approach is rooted in our culture, the original culture of meditation, spiritual development, cultivation, and so forth. One of the books that I published is Nkwamua Whole Life Journal. We talk about constructing whole life from the center of culture. And this is something that you can share. It's a very small journal, like 28 pages. This is something we share with youth as well as adults. Basic information about culture, nothing too in-depth. So anybody from, you know, somebody who's 8, 9, 10 years old can understand these concepts and so forth. But they're also rooted, grounded. So for example, in this particular section, we talk about the 7-part definition of melanin or abatum, the chemical in your skin that gives you your color and how it photosynthesizes, you know, sunlight and transforms it into energy or transforms sound waves into energy for your body and so forth. Melanin goes to the site of a cut or a wound and helps to clot the blood and forms a scab, which is a black Band-Aid and so forth to help protect the, you know, the body while healing is taking place. A number of different things that this black chemical in our bodies that gives us our color does for us. So when people study that scientifically, they begin to understand this black substance that gives us our color also is found in all of our major organs. This is why our organs can work properly. If we don't have proper amounts of melanin in our major organs, they will not function properly. So they start having a different respect for that chemical that gives us our color. That's just one thing. That's one of the first things we teach amongst the youth, and that's the first thing that they really get excited about. And then we have principles throughout the book, the Adinkra symbols in Akan culture, the Shwe Shwe Mdria. You examine what is within so that you may fully understand what is within. So when they see these symbols, they can incorporate them in their meditative practice. There are proverbs associated with each symbol that have to do with ancestral wisdom that can enhance every aspect of life, a number of different things. So when you go through the book, there are like 7 different sections. Portion deals with holistic health, sacred symbolism and proverbial wisdom to incorporate in everyday life, true historical information. We talk about the mirror, the pyramid, and so forth. And for example, when you look at the hieratic script of the Medutu, the hieroglyphs, the shorthand cursive version of the Medutu, the hieroglyphs from ancient Kemet, you see in hieratic, as well as the Demotic, another short term or short version, cursive version of the script. So you have the hieratic that goes back 3,000 plus years, a cursive version of the complex, you know, hieroglyphic system. And then Demotic came into use about 2,600 years ago, near the end of the Kemetic Empire, the Kemetic Empire, Egyptian Empire that we were running and so forth. Another shorthand cursive version. So 2 different versions of these, you know, the complex script. Here we show the hieratic and demotic versions of the numeral system. And then when you compare them to the Hindu or Hindi Arabic numerals, as they say, and they'll say that English numbers come from the Arabic numerals or the Hindi Arabic numerals. 1 stroke represents the letter 1 or the number 1, 2 strokes is 2, 3 strokes is 3, and so forth. And you see where these characters come from. But you find that the Hindu Arabic symbols come directly from ancient Khanate Kemet that predates India by thousands of years. So we just show that just once again, everything that we learn in school, whether it's numbers, mathematics, medicine, science, engineering, all of that was originated by our people thousands of years ago before any other group was on Earth. So those kinds of things assist our people when we're talking about meditation, when we're talking about overcoming obstacles. When you see the blueprint that our people laid down back thousands of years ago, it shows your potential. You're directly descendant of these people. We're also descendant of those people who were forced into enslavement, and the percentage of people who survived that and continue, we're descended from the ones who survived. Some people didn't make it during enslavement. They died and they never had children. There would have been millions of more people in this country, of our people in this country, if everybody survived. Some people did not survive. We're dependent or descendant from those who actually survived all manner of torture and freed ourselves and waged war against the whites in Arab Spring and, forced the end of enslavement through warfare and so forth. We survived, so we have the capacity to overcome any obstacle, but we also have this foundation of civilization. Every aspect of the arts and sciences is within our epigenetic memory. So that assists people to overcome any obstacle mentally because they can see evidence, thousands of years of evidence that we've overcome every obstacle, and we've utilized math and science and medicine and everything else to address any issue that arises in our community. So we even show a little bit of, you see Mentuhotep, the great Susuw king, and then his queen, Henut means queen, Kawit. And what do you see her doing at this particular point? She's getting her hair twisted. So that goes back over 4,000 years. And when people see that, they're shocked to see it, but, we've been doing this for thousands of years. So this, of course, is Queen T, Amenhotep III. They are the grandparents of King Tutankhamen, misnomer King Tut. And of course, we just, show a relationship between somebody from this point and, going forward. So, so there's a lot of information in that particular journal, but we talk about holistic health, we talk about trustery, we talk about culture, we talk about philosophy, we talk about principles of, overcoming obstacles, a number of different things. On the holistic health side, one of the things we show is this plant physiognomy. So you see walnuts, they're in the same shape as the brain. And then when you look at the, the properties of walnuts, they are specifically a brain food. And when you look at the different fruits and vegetables, when they take the shape of specific organs in the body, you find that they are good for that particular organ and its function. So that's something that we figured out thousands of years ago, and it's still, true today. So these are the kinds of things that open people's minds to say, well, wait a minute, there are a lot of things that we don't know about what's happening around us in nature. And it just opens them up to be more, open to studying and learning and incorporating new things and utilizing Susuw to address any, obstacle that they come in contact with. So that book, of course, just like our other 31 books, are all free downloads from our website, but we will be going through that. But we'll also be showing how you can, as we said earlier, when people go to certain schools, certain programs of human services professionals or people's, professions, corporate entities and so forth, going to Black businesses, or certain people say, hey, we want somebody to come out and, host a meditation session and so forth, or start a weekly program. Some places don't ask for certifications, but very often they ask for a certification. And the reason why we're doing this is because people, they appreciate the work that we've been doing. They know we've been doing this for over 30 years as far as meditating and publishing on this for 20 years and so forth. And what people have been doing is getting some certification from some other entity that isn't really teaching accurate information, and then utilizing that to go, to show people that they've gone through a process to become certified to do this. And people had asked us, when will we have a process where they can get certified through us? And once you complete the course and receive your certificate and so forth, and if somebody asks for your credential, then you can present that to them so they can, and sometimes for funding sources, people have money set aside after school programs, or, corporations, when they bring people in for seminars or webinars and so forth, and they say, hey, so-and-so is going to come and do a meditation session and talk a little bit about meditation or mindfulness and how it can help you with your physical health, as well as your focus at work and these different things. Just the funding sources just want a credential. Oh, does this person have a credential? If they do, okay, they'll take that down and they'll go ahead and approve it. But different organizations, different groups and so forth, they have money set aside where it may just be you go into a women's shelter once a week and you teach a little 30-minute or 40-minute class. Then you go to a different one, the next day. You may have 3 or 4 a week, and you go to 4 different women or family shelters a week to teach the sisters, how to overcome anxiety, how to deal with depression. Meditation is going to assist them with that. It's going to assist them with going through anything that they're experiencing. It's going to help them overcome that, help them be focused and change their diet and change their way they interact and, interface with their children and adults and other individuals, so they can navigate their way through situations and come out better. Same thing with youth at schools, the same thing at corporations and so forth, cultural organizations. There are different ways to structure these things where people set aside, they have money set aside and they're like, hey, we'll pay somebody $100 or $200 to come out for an hour and conduct this piece. So we're going to talk about that, how to structure these things, these kinds of contractual, arrangements and so forth. But that's it. We just wanted to give a little informational about what we're doing, why we have this certification course for our people. It's open to Afuraka and Afuraitkait, meaning African Black people only. So if you have any questions, of course, you can post it in the chat room on YouTube. But if you look at, so let me just switch over. Okay, so this is the Susuw page. Of course, that's the video. That's just a short informational trailer about the upcoming course. It begins on June 18th. It's a 4-week course. Now, sometimes you will see people have seminars where they teach seminars or webinars. They may do it, in a day, like an entire day, and you can get certified by the end of the day, or a weekend, or, a couple of days in a row and so forth. We stretched it out for, 4 sessions, about 90 minutes per session and so forth, because throughout that 28, 4 weeks or 28-day cycle, you have a chance to every single day engage that meditative process with a new perspective that we're putting forward with different information and so forth. So, by the time you finish that 28-day process, and starting on June 18th, so it'll be 21, but even leading up to that first week, as well as the week after, that 28-day cycle, which is almost a full lunar cycle, 29.5 days, but going through that entire process, you will have been engaging the meditative process every single day, incorporating these new lessons in that. So when you, put yourself forward to begin to utilize this certification to empower our community, you have been practicing at least for an entire lunar cycle. The meditative practices that you will establish with young people or adults, these are very basic. You're not teaching deep philosophical religious principles. You'll give basic principles, but first and foremost, it's similar to, teaching somebody some exercise and some stillness and some mindfulness. Just like you can teach somebody how to, lift weights and so forth, exercise, empower themselves. You can do the same thing here, and it's a mindfulness exercise to a certain extent, but then it takes them internally and they begin to transform the way they perceive the world. They look more deeply into the world and themselves and calculate the depth of their spirit, body, and so forth. That's what we began to address. So, but this is the page. You see the flyer. So it's 4 weeks. The cost is $399, $400 for 4 weeks. Basically, we basically made it $99 a week. So you can pay the full registration, or we have an option where you can pay half, $199 up front, and then the second half you can go back to the page and, you know, pay before the beginning of the course. So either way, both options are on the page. And then we have, you know, approaches, different payment options here, Zelle and Cash App and Venmo and PayPal and so forth. You can also download the Nkwamua Whole Life Journal directly from that page. You can start checking that out. Again, that's just a short journal, basic information. The whole life approach to health and wellness and so forth is something that we established a number of years ago. We've utilized this book, giving copies of it to, you know, youth in different programs and so forth, as well as adults, as well as when I was training, you know, managers and supervisors and case managers and, you know, social workers and so forth within this process, utilizing this Nkwamua Whole Life Journal. So you can download that, of course, for free from the page. Okay. So we just wanted to put forth that informational so you can see, you know, what we're doing. So in order to, you know, reserve your space so you can get in the course, you can go to the page, the Susuw page, and you can reserve your spot. So I'm gonna check in the chat room on YouTube to make sure we didn't miss anybody. Hold on one second. Okay. Okay, so it's a question about what are the benefits of meditation? So what are the effects of meditation? So there are different expressions of meditation. When we talk about meditation and talking about pondering or, you know, calculating the depths of something or studying or measuring, in reality, the nature of your spirit body, there are different forms. Sitting down and focused observation is one expression of meditation. Ritual dance in Afuraitkait, the African culture, is a different, more fiery expression of meditation. Ritual song is a more cool expression of meditation. It's a gateway to the spirit realm. Ritual prayer is another form of meditation. Ritual chant. Different ritual practices are gateways to communication with the spirit realm and so forth. But when we're talking about this, in fact, we have courses where we address that in detail. And in fact, let me show that real quick. On our Akan page on our website, you see the ancestral instruction. Okay. So over the past like 5 years and so forth, we teaching these different classes. Some are 6-week classes, some are 4-week classes, some are 7-week classes or courses. We have, you know, one of them is a 13-week course, 13-week course, but most of them are either 6-week courses or 4-week courses. All of them are archived now, so we have 40 online courses. This is a collage of them. When you scroll on the page, you'll see the original flyers for each one of the courses. They still, are available now. They're 50% off because they're archived, so you can look at the different flyers and so forth and see which one you want, and you can purchase that. And since you brought that question up, let me just pull up one of them. Okay. So one of the courses was the Ankara course, Origin of Yoga, Nature of the Chakra. 6-week online course. It's archived now. So what we did was we went through that entire book in detail, as well as some other books and some of the other articles that we published, but the main focus was going in detail, those different texts from ancient Kemet we talked about. We went into detail about them, the nature of the function of the divinities and ancestral spirits and everything else. So we did a deep dive into that particular text. And then when you scroll through and see the other 40, the 40 courses that we have, we go into detailed information about the cosmology and ritual practice and a number of different things. Let me just see if there's another example. Quick example. Okay. For example, our Nkwamua course, 4 elemental rituals of spirit communication, practical instruction. So we talk about Oshwe, which is libation, Nkomre, which is an ancestral shrine, Susuw, which is meditation, Afuraitkait, which is soul washing or spiritual head cleansing and so forth. So that was a 4-week course. It's archived, and we go into a deep dive into that. But that's, of course, you can always, access those. But for this particular course, it's introductory. It's for youth and adults, people who are typically not, well-informed or informed at all about our culture, people who, on one hand, may have heard about meditation, assumed it came from India or something, but also heard that it can have specific benefits. And when it comes to the general population, enhancing learning outcomes, that's for youth as well as adults, regulating behavior, overcoming anxiety and depression, rebalancing hormones, lowering blood pressure, reducing stress, regulating weight loss, overcoming addictions, developing discipline, maintaining focus to overcome obstacles to short and long-term goals. Those things alone will greatly enhance the lives of our people. And typically, when our people start off learning about things like this, and they see the benefit of it just by, engaging in basic meditation or Susuw, on a periodic basis, because they see the effectiveness of it, then they want to learn more about their culture and where it comes from and how we came to develop these practices. And then they start looking into trustery and they look into cultural and ritual practices and so forth. And that leads to that very often, typically. But starting off, this is for the our general community, our general public, our general community, youth as well as adults. And when people get the information, they see the immediate benefit and they see the value of it and so forth. Okay. Okay, so before we log off, I just wanted to make sure we didn't have any more questions. So once again, this is what we're putting forward. So go to the Susuw page on the website. You can register now to secure your spot. There's a limited number of spaces, so secure your spot today. And you can share the information as well. Once again, this course is open to Afuraitkait meaning African people, Black people exclusively. So you can share with our people, whether you're on social media, or just, by word of mouth and so forth. But yes, So this is an offering, once again, it was requested for a number of years. People have requested us to do something with regard to certification. They've seen the 40 courses that we have, and we just completed the 40th course a few weeks ago. So people have seen those and they've taken those and so forth, and they benefited from that. But we hadn't done, we hadn't taken the step of certification, even though people have asked for that for a number of years because they needed that. And some people just don't want to get certifications from other organizations or groups that are teaching things that are halfway accurate and halfway not accurate. And they're forced to take it from them so they can get the piece of paper, the certificate, so they can utilize that, you know, to engage in entrepreneurial endeavors. So we decided to go ahead and at least do this one for Susuw, for meditation, because that's something that's foundational, that you don't need to spend years and years and years studying. Again, we meditate every day, but now we're taking, you know, control of that, taking a proactive approach to utilizing what we've already been doing to pinpoint the accuracy of it so we can develop ourselves, enhance ourselves in every aspect, facet of life. So this is why we decided to use Susuw, primarily because people have been asking specifically for this specific certification. So, okay, so we're going to go ahead and end it here. If you have any questions, of course, our email is in the description for the video. Hit us up. But again, yet I say we thank everybody for joining in with us, and we look forward to connecting with you all in the course. And Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's up.